Hello, everybody, and we have I got a little note to pass along to you. We'll be as we continue with the read today of When the Legends Die. Remember that in about 2 weeks we'll be wrapping up the fourth quarter, so make sure you're keeping up with the readings. And for the language arts students, your the book test will be the final test. Will be your semester test. The final grade. So as we get closer to the end of the book, that will be the end of the quarter is finishing up this book. But today we'll be getting into chapters 26, 27, and 28, and chapter 6 begins on page 107. So page 107 of When the Legends Die. Now we left off where Tom's had his first taste of working for Red, and again, Red is a crook. He's looking to use Tom for setting up gambling, to set up wagers where Tom looks great, then he'll throw a ride, look bad, and then he'll say, "Oh, give it one more shot," and then Red turns around and uses that to sucker people for bets. Even though Tom can make good money earning and winning, Red doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't know how to make a decent working wage. All he knows is, how can I scam people? And so that's why he'd much rather watch Tom lose than win legitimately and earn money legitimately. And so that's where we're at on chapter 26, page 107. So Tom entered the world of small-time rodeo, a world of hot, dusty little cow country towns, makeshift arenas, vicious, unpredictable horses, ambitious country riders, and jealous third-rate professionals. And with Red Dillon, a world of noisy saloons, smoky pool halls, ratty little hotels, fly-speck chili parlors, and conniving bettors. They went all the way to Bernalillo for their first stop. It was a 4-day ride, but Red wanted to be sure they were out of range of anyone who might have been at Aztec. They traveled light with only their bedrolls, didn't even take the Bronx saddle. "It's a dead giveaway," Red said. "They'd see that saddle and know one of us has done a lot of rodeoing. If the competition's fast and the horse is especially bad, we can always borrow a Bronx saddle. Sometimes," he added with a grin, "it's healthier to wait around and get your own saddle after a ride." They rode into Bernalillo 2 days before the rodeo and went to the livery stable. Red, looking like just another trail-worn saddle bum, asked what all the excitement was about, and the liveryman was eager to talk about the rodeo. Finally, Red said, "Hear that, Tom? The man says they're having a rodeo. You want to stay and have a go at it?" "You ride or rope?" the liveryman asked. "A stove-up puncher like me?" Red laughed. "No, sirree, I'm an old man. I like my women wild, but my horse is gentle. But the boy here thinks he can ride. Maybe this is his chance to find out." Now the liveryman looked at Tom. With his ragged haircut, faded work shirt, and Levi's and battered boots, Tom looked like just another Indian kid. The liveryman smiled and said, "They aren't running any juvenile events this year." Red grinned. "Oh, Tom talks big, almost man-sized," and he made a deal with the liveryman to put up their horses and let them spread their bedrolls in the hay. They stalled their horses and left the gear in the hayloft, then went out to size up the situation. They made up the rounds of the saloons, pool halls, and cafes, and Red told the same story he had told in Aztec. By the next morning, the word had gotten around. The Indian kid thought he could ride. And as though it wasn't enough of a joke, the saddle bum seemed to think that the boy, too, could. And apparently he had a little money to back him up. The trap practically ate itself. That night before the rodeo opened, Red summed it up and gave Tom his orders. "These wise guys have got it all figured, so we'll just play along with them. You're going to make a fair to middling ride the first go-round. Then the second go-round, you're going to foul out. You understand? We'll play them fair and square, give them what they expect. By the finals, you're going to go to town. We're going to give them the works. We'll take their shirts." He grinned. "Fair and square can't ask them any more than that, can they?" Tom followed orders. Red placed a smattering of small, cautious bets on the first go-round, and Tom made an awkward, amateurish ride. Red paid off his bets and got odds on the second go-round, but still kept his bets small. And Tom pulled leather and fouled out. And then Red played the drunken braggart. He still thought Tom could ride, though he was the best damn rider of them all. Tom had just had bad luck up to now. Bet on the final go-round? Damn right he would. And when he got the odds he wanted, he made a half-dozen big bets. So Tom made a spectacular final ride, clean and clear all the way, and Red collected his winnings. They got out of town before the bettors knew what hit them. It was, as Red said, as easy as falling out of a bed dead drunk. That set the pattern. For the next 2 months, they shuttled back and forth across the state, Red picking only the little rodeos that offered purses too small to lure even a third-rate professional from any distance. The system wasn't foolproof. Once Tom made such a flagrant foul out, the judges barred him from the finals. Red ran it in for 2 days after that one. And once Red tried to set up the deadfall only to have the local betting crowd catch him in it by refusing to go for the extra ride. But it averaged out, as Red said. They worked 7 rodeos and Red cashed in at 5 of them. Then they went to Carrizozo, and everything went wrong. Trying to make a losing ride look honest in the first go-round, Tom was thrown and landed heavily on his left shoulder. His arm was so lame he had to ride right-handed in the second go-round. Off-balanced, he grabbed the saddle and fouled out to spare himself another fall. The situation was hopeless, and Red agreed there was no use even trying to ride in the finals. And to cap it all, Red got roaring drunk that night, started a brawl, and landed in jail. It took him a week after he sobered up to argue himself out of jail by paying a fine and promising to get out of town. By then, Tom's arm had begun to heal, but he was ready to call it quits. Tom was tired. He had averaged a rodeo week all fall with long, hard rides in between. He was young and strong, but the beating he took in the saddle was beginning to tell. And he wasn't even getting the satisfaction of winning on horses he knew he could ride. There were a dozen ways to lose a round. He knew them all by now. But every one of them took something out of him. When he rode loose in the saddle, his spine took a beating. When he broke rhythm, his neck was jerked, and his arm still throbbed, and his whole shoulder ached night and day. He wanted to quit and go home. Red, however, had been rolled and robbed better than $1,000 during that big drunk in Carrizozo. Red wasn't quitting. "Oh, there's a little jerkwallet called Felice," Red growled, "down the road a piece. They're putting on a show next week. Probably some of the riders at Carrizozo will be there. That'll just help the setup. We're going to work Felice, and I mean work it." Felice was a hard-bitten little alkali water town with equally hard-bitten bettors. As Red had suspected, they had heard about what had happened to Tom at Carrizozo. And so, as he had said, that helped rather than hurt. Red began working towards a deadfall. Everything went according to plan for the first 2 go-rounds. With his lame arm, Tom couldn't be a power rider. He couldn't keep pressure on the reins, so he had to be a rhythm rider. Give the horse its head. It didn't take much faking to lose the number 1 ride. He was glad to grab the saddle and foul out the second go-round. Red's plans couldn't have worked out better. Now for the final round, Red said, "We'll just saddle our horses and tie them in these cottonwoods back in the stands, just in case. There's a couple of loudmouth know-it-alls that may start trouble. Now you ride like I told you in the finals, and then I'll set up the extra. And when you've rode the extra horse into the ground, get ready to run. Things start popping like they may, you get the hell out and bring the horses to the main gate, and I'll meet you there." So Tom made his final go-ride and lost it as Red has ordered him to. Then Red put on his drunken braggart act and set up the extra ride and got the bets he wanted. The horse the bettors chose was big and mean, but Tom knew after the first few seconds he could ride him even with a sore arm. Now there were horses in the bucking string that could have given him plenty of trouble, horses that kept shifting rhythm. But this one was a pattern bucker, full of fight and meanness, but predictable. Tom rode him clean for the first 10 seconds, then raked and rowed and loosened him up with all his tricks. It wasn't the best ride he ever made, but it was good enough. He rode the horse to a standstill. But even as he dismounted, he heard the rumble of trouble at the chutes. He jumped out of the shafts and saw the fighting start. 2 men jumped Red, and Red knocked one of them down, then began to retreat towards the gate. Then the sideline crowd surged out in the arena towards the chutes. Tom ducked into the crowd, and nobody paid any attention to him, all intent on the fight. Tom squirmed his way, finally got clear, and rode to the gate. He got outside, got the horses, and rode back towards the gate. Just as he got there, Red came charging through the crowd. He had reached the gate and was almost in the clear when someone grabbed him by the shirt. Red slid out of the shirt like a snake out of his skin and yelled, "Get going!" and grabbed the horn of his own saddle. He slapped his horse on the flank, pulled himself up, and with both horses lunging into a run. As they raced through Felice's dusty main street, Tom saw Red trying to stuff wads of money deeper in his pockets. Several green bills fluttered free, and Red grabbed at him, and he began to laugh. He slapped his horse with his rein ends. They all went out of town in a cloud of white dust. They rode almost a mile and came to a brushy gully. Red led the way into the brush. A few minutes later, 6 men went pounding past, spurring their horses. Red watched them go, and he grinned. They'll be halfway to Alamogordo before someone gets the bright idea that maybe we didn't go that way. Red had a big bruise under his left eye, his nose was skinned, and the knuckles on both hands were bleeding. He had lost his hat, and his naked torso was grotesquely white from his neck to his belt. But he had set up the deadfall, and he had won it. When the posse was out of sight, they rode up the gully for a couple of miles, came to a creek, and followed it for almost an hour. By then, Red's naked skin was beginning to sunburn, so they stopped in a grove of box elders till sundown. Then they went on, heading west into the hills. Towards midnight, they came into a little rancho where the women, probably tired as well as careless, had left her washing on the line. Levi's work shirts and other drawers flapped in the dying moonlight like dismembered ghosts. Red chose a shirt and put it on, then pinned a $5 bill in the clothesline. As they rode on, he said with a laugh, "That woman will leave her washing out every night for the next 6 months, figuring some well-heeled saint did this for her and may never come back. Or may come back, excuse me." At dawn, they came to a sheep camp just as the Mexican herder was getting up. Red picked up his rifle the herder had carelessly left standing against a tree and ordered him to cook breakfast. When they had eaten, Red appropriated the herder's hat, and when the herder called him vile Spanish names, Red took the rifle to the second hilltop, emptied the magazine, and jammed the weapon muzzle down into the sod. They worked north, keeping to the hills, eating at sheep camps and little ranches, until the money in Red's pocket and the thirst in his throat got the better of him. "Oh, the hell with this," he said, and they rode to Socorro. Red found a saloon and a poker game, and Tom waited out his spree in a shabby little hotel room. And at last, haggard with a hangover and his pockets almost empty, Red said, "Let's go home." So you see, going into chapter 27, the routine is set. They go from rodeo to rodeo, and Red loses their money eventually. It doesn't matter how much they win on the bets. Red thinks his luck can't stop. He's going to go. Like I said, this one he goes and gets drunk and loses almost all their money that they almost got killed for in a poker game. Continuing on, chapter 27. The next spring, they worked their early rodeos in eastern New Mexico and the Oklahoma Panhandle, and that fall they worked little Colorado towns. It was the same story over and over. Tom won or lost pretty much as Red told him to. Tom had learned most of the tricks, but now and then a horse outguessed him, and occasionally he was thrown when Red had ordered him to win. Red was furious each time, accused him of the double cross, but in his sober, good-natured intervals, he said things evened out pretty well. "We're still eating, and I always say a man's doing all right as long as he don't go hungry or thirsty too long a stretch." Now Tom's life settled into a pattern of long rides between rodeos, where he just drifted and didn't even think, of days and nights in shabby hotels, third-rate cafes, and noisy little towns where he slept, ate, and waited, of hot, sweaty, horse-smelling crowd, noisy arenas, of hard-riding go-rounds where he really lived. Those were the times when he endured everything else, especially the winning rides that Red eventually ordered at every rodeo. The other riders paid him little attention. Time after time, some gay-shirted, arrogant rider mistook him for a stable boy or a gangling kid who had sneaked into the arena and either ordered him out or tried to send him on some errand. That was inevitable. Tom had grown a couple of inches, put on 20 pounds of muscle, and sinew was almost as big as Red. But he still played the part of a buck-country Indian kid with ragged hair and shabby work clothes. The other contestants, even the local amateurs, wore gaudy shirts, bright neckerchiefs, and fancy stitched boots. Tom looked like a rusty, bedraggled crow in a pen of peacocks. Another winter, and when spring came, Red said he guessed they better try North Texas this time around. But a long ride there and rodeos were far apart, with bettors cautious. Red became sullen and surly. "There's no profit in this," he said. "We got to find some way to cover more ground." But Tom was riding well when he rode, and by early June, Red decided to make a killing at one of the better shows up near the Oklahoma line. He picked up a fair-sized stake and winnings along the way, and they moved on to the show that Red had marked. Red sized things up and decided a final go-round win with the big stakes. Tom made his routine rides the first two go-rounds, was all set for the finals, when he would not only win Red's bets, but have the satisfaction of a real top-form ride. When he went to the chutes before the finish, Tom wondered why Red was so pleased with the world. Finally, Red said, "I got a surprise for you." Tom asked what it was, but all Red would say was, "You just go out there and do your stuff, and we'll go home in style." Tom had drawn a big roan and had thrown the best local riders in 6 seconds on the first go-round. It looked like the worst horse Tom had drawn all spring. Red said it was a tight bucker to the right and fast. "Keep a short rein, power the bastard all you can. You can ride him till hell and gone." Tom settled himself in the saddle, dried his hands, massaged a short rein, and threaded it between his fingers. He set his spurs. The judge signaled ready, and Tom gave the signal to the gate man. The bucking strap was jerked tight around the broncs flanks. The gate swung open, the roan lunged out, bucking viciously. Tom powered the rein, hauled the horse's head around, and it went hog wild. It bucked twice, then ran straight across the arena and slammed into the fence as though it were stone blind. Tom didn't even have time to kick free of the stirrup. His right leg was caught against a fence stringer, and the stab of pain was like a lightning bolt through him. But he kicked free as the bronc went down and sprawled on his hands and knees. He got up, took 3 steps, and fell, just out of reach of the bronc's thrashing hooves. The horse had broken its neck. The crowd groaned. The pickup men galloped up, swooped most out the saddle, and helped Tom to his feet. He tried to step on that right leg and would have fallen again if the men hadn't held him up. Red came running out of the chutes, cursing like a devil, and helped Tom hop back to the chutes and sit down dizzy with pain. A doctor came, a tall, leathery man. After a quick probe with his fingers, he said, "I think your leg's broken, son." He looked up at Red, standing by and still damning everything in sight. "Are you this boy's father?" "Hell no," Red said. "He's an Indian." "Well, I didn't ask the color of his skin," the doctor snapped. "Are you responsible for him?" "Well, I run things if that's what you mean." By then they had brought the stretcher. "Get him over to my office," the doctor said, "where I can make a proper examination." Now, the office was only a block down the street. The doctor gave Tom a shot to ease the pain, made a thorough examination, and said, "The tibia's broken. That's the big bone in your lower leg. You're through riding for a couple months, son." Red, who was scowling and muttering to himself, exclaimed, "That's a hell of a thing to do to me." The doctor swung around, furious. "Whose leg is this, his or yours? Get out of here, you damn fool, and get a pair of crutches for this boy. There's a drugstore down the corner. Now get." Red snorted. "I had close to $1,500 on that ride." But when the doctor turned on him again, Red left. The doctor fitted splints and bandages, and when he had first finished up, he said to Tom, "I want you to stay out of the saddle till next fall. You understand?" "Well, how am I going to get home?" "Where do you live?" "In New Mexico, over near Aztec." "I've got to ride home." Just then, Red came back with the crutches. The doctor adjusted them and asked Red, "How's this boy going to get home? He can't ride a horse." "He'll get home all right," Red said. "How?" "I said I'll get him home all right. Come on, Tom." "Just a minute," the doctor said. "There's a little matter you're forgetting. My bill?" "No," Red said angrily. "That's on the rodeo." "No, it's on you." Red tried to argue, but got nowhere. Finally, he paid the doctor's bill and they left. Out on the street, Red demanded, "Why in hell, if you had to do something like this, couldn't you do it yesterday before I put my money on you?" Tom didn't answer. He was still dizzy and he was having trouble with the crutches. He hoped Red had left the horses in front of the arena. He didn't know how he could get into the saddle, but he figured he could ride once he got in. They went up the street to the arena's main gate, Red still snorting and snarling. Tom looked for their horses. They weren't anywhere in sight. Then Red cut across the street towards a battered green pickup truck with a 2-horse trailer. He turned and shouted to Tom, waiting uncertainly at the curb, "Come on over here." Tom hobbled across where Red stood beside the truck, half grin on his face. "Where are the horses?" Tom asked. "In the trailer." Red gave a short, bitter laugh. "I said we'd go home and stop. I didn't figure I'd go home broke." He was both proud and angry. Pride won for the moment. "I bought this outfit this morning off of that cap roper that broke his leg yesterday. He was hard up for the doctor money. Get in." And he turned away. "Well, where are you going now?" Tom asked. "Well, to get your chaps. See if I can find a stakeholder and get my money back." Red crossed the street and went into the arena, truculent as a dog looking for a fight. Tom crouched around the trailer. The horses were restless, nervous in the trailer's quivering floorboards. He saw the 2 saddles and the bedrolls in the back of the truck. He knew little about cars, but this outfit looked as though it had been through over a lot of roads. And at last he opened the door, pulled himself up, and settled himself in the well-worn seat and waited. Red was gone 15 minutes. He came back with a stormy look, tossed Tom's chaps in the back with the saddles, got behind the wheel and started the motor. He ground the gears, jerked it to a start, and snorted, "Goddamn thieves." Obviously, he hadn't recovered his bet money. Red wasn't much of a driver, but he did keep the outfit on the road, and he avoided other cars and trucks, some of them by inches. Before they got to Albuquerque, he stopped and bought a box of groceries for Mayo and a case of whiskey for himself. Then he waited till late at night, when the streets were deserted, to drive through Albuquerque. Even at that, he needed several drinks to make it. A few drinks called for more, and by the time they reached Bernalillo, just before dawn, he didn't care what side of the road he drove on. He got through Bernalillo, though, and then in the open country before he was too drunk to see the roadside fences. There he pulled up and slept till late afternoon. Then they went on home. Red stole enough for a week-long spree, and when Mayo went through his pockets, he found almost $100. Mayo took over the care of Tom's leg. He massaged it, urging the circulation, and when the bone began to knit, he kept the ankle from going weak and stiff. By midsummer, the leg seemed as good as ever, but despite Red's objections, Mayo insisted that Tom should stay out of the saddle till August. Then Tom got on one of the gentle horses and rode it out in the flats a few hours each day, getting the feel of the saddle again. 2 weeks of that, and he was ready to ride the broncs. They brought out the rough string. Tom began testing his skills and his timing, and by mid-September, he was ready for the fall rodeos. All right, that gets us through chapter 27, and we'll pick up then with chapter 28 next time as we continue with When the Legends Die.